and the Bible. Welcome to Flat Earth and the Bible. Episode 1. We've got an exciting guest for you this evening. His name is Vince White, and we're going to be talking a lot about just what he's been up to and a bit about his past. Vince White's an American comic book artist, writer, creator, and independent publisher. He's best known for creator-owned work, The Legend of Willpower comic book, and one of the founders of the Primal Paper Comics, Virginia-based comic book coalition and independent comic book publishers and creators. Vince's technical training and background is in computer-aided graphic design, but he made the move to full-time comic book creator with his first independent publishing of The Legend of Willpower in March 2011. Now, coming up to 2016, Vince has got an exciting project that we're going to be talking about tonight called Flat. And without further ado, let's introduce Vince. Vince, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you, Robbie.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. I said this is the first episode of Flat Earth and the Bible. Going to be running this as a weekly show and just getting excited, becoming a co-producer on this project. I just felt it was important to get this to the top of the list to see this project come to fruition, because I think that not only some of the biblical themes in the comic and the card game, I think that when it comes to the lies that we've been told about the world we live in, and being brought into a fictional way through a comic book, I think is extraordinary. I think it's a great way to present this information, even if it is fictional, to get people start questioning and what would a world look like that the hero of this comic book is part of. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about your history and just what led you up to this time for you.
Well, yeah, like you said, I'm a comic book artist. Before I was a comic book artist, I was a fan just like everyone else, a kid who loved comics and Saturday morning cartoons and things like that. And I just realized that those things had a great effect on me as I got older. I didn't realize it, but it taught me right from wrong. It taught me morals. You don't realize it when you're a kid and you're watching the good guy dispense of the bad guy, but you're actually taught that good guys or bad guys never win. And, the good guy saves the day. And, you take a bite out of crime. Stop, drop, and roll, how a bill becomes a law, all those things. And as I looked out over the landscape of entertainment, especially as I got more and more into graphic design, I realized that those nostalgic properties have disappeared. They're no longer there. In fact, all the Saturday morning cartoons are no longer on public channels anymore. They're all relegated to like commercial or cable channels. And so for the last 20 years, kids have been watching cartoons that are more sarcastic and the heroes are more dark. You see all the movies, the thing is to have the hero dark. And so I wanted to try to create a line of comics that brought that nostalgia back, that sense of right and wrong back, the clear distinction between the good and the evil, and to give kids something to dream about again and look forward to. And my books are all ages, but I emphasize the fact that they're supposed to be inspiring young minds and young readers. And I wanted to create something that was for reluctant readers. And so hence the Powerverse and comics. And what led me here to do this Kickstarter for Flat, the comic book, is about 6-7 months ago, I was on YouTube, watching the normal streams, news, 5-second animal videos, and then all of a sudden I see something about flat Earth. So actually it was an interview, and this gentleman was talking about flat Earth, and he brought up the horizon line, and he said the horizon line never falls. And we've all been there. We've looked out on the ocean, and we see the flat horizon line. if you've, I'm ex-military, so if you've ever been in an airplane or flown anywhere, I've been to Germany, all over. And as we look out the airplane windows, you see the horizon line, the carpet of clouds stretch out to the horizon line. And it really made me stop and think. It never falls from eye level. It never drops to your nose, to your lips, to your chin, and beneath you. And me already being a sort of moon skeptic, an Apollo skeptic, this sort of just clicked in my mind. And as an artist, I realized, we draw the horizon line falling. We draw it to make dramatic effects. We study perspective, foreshortening and worm's eye view, aerial views, these things to emphasize meaning within a panel. And when we think we think in our minds that the horizon line drops, but in reality it still stays high. When we draw Superman flying, we always draw him flying in clear blue skies. We never draw him with the horizon line behind him because it would just take all the fun out of it. But I realized that is the case. If we were really drawing something realistically to match what we see, the horizon line would be in the back of every picture of him in the air. And that just blew my mind. And from there, I was kind of hooked, watching video after video. How does this work? How does this, is it more to it? And it just snowballed into me having to put it into a comic book, which is Flat right now. And which obviously led me to you. I'm so glad that I met you, and now we've become co-producers on this project. And Flat is a Kickstarter project. Can I go ahead and tell them where Flat is?
Yeah, I was just going to mention because I wanted to kind of throw it up. It's a very exciting night. We got a little bit of feedback. Might just wait till it. Okay, I think it's gone. But yeah, it's a very exciting night because, like I said, we're just a few dollars off from hitting the goal. The initial set amount was $4,000, and we're at $3,982 for this Kickstarter. So again, it's going to become a reality. It makes me very excited. A month or so back, I got very excited at the project, getting to know you better, Vince. Kind of hearing about your story, which you'll be going through with the listeners tonight. It was just an exciting time. Again, presenting this, you in the comic book industry, dealing, with illustrations and being able to present it in this way, I think was fantastic. So the storyline, the ideas, I think are just absolutely phenomenal. So I definitely wanted to become a co-producer, with you on this. I wanted to see it come to fruition, and it's an exciting night. Like I said,
and that was just happenstance. Like you. You came across it just like anyone else, I guess. So I was kind of selectively picking people to come look at the Kickstarter, and some kind of way I think you got word of it, and you looked at it, you liked it. We talked a little bit. I even think you donated originally or pledged to it, and then we kept talking a little bit more. And you're like, hey, this is an awesome project. I thought it was, and that's why I wanted to do it. And for all those who are listening, Flat is the culmination of about 6 to 7 months of me researching the flat Earth concept and speaking about it amongst some of my comic friends. And the thing about flat Earth, or even if you're questioning the globe or the shape of the globe, the size of the globe, something about those words, flat Earth, just brings out the worst responses in people. And it was so true with me and some of my comic buddies, you could say. And they did not want to have me to talk about it. I guess I have to admit that I became a little obsessed over it because I'm trying to figure out what is this thing, and I was trying to share the information with them, and they limited our conversations to only comic book talk. So I said, okay, So I said, you know what? I'm going to make a comic book about it. Therefore, I can talk to you guys about the concept. And I guess that wasn't that. That still didn't make them happy, and ultimately, uh, we kind of broke ties over this subject, and uh, had to create a whole new publishing brand, Cryptic Comics. This is not with the Powerverse. This is with some other another entity that I was with, a business entity, and so I created Cryptic Comics, and the idea was to explore the flat Earth mythology or concept in a comic form, using what I modern day superheroes, and the idea um, is what if a hero had the ability to fly high enough to see the Earth for himself, and the shape it was and everything else. And that is the concept behind flat. It it starts off there, and it goes on this wild journey of almost oh gosh, there was a movie called Enemy of the State where oh was Smith, what's his name? Will Smith is somehow in possession of some knowledge via cassette tape or something, and he becomes public enemy number one. And I'm just imagining a hero, and for the sake of the argument, just so you can picture it, someone like Superman, who finds out the shape of the Earth isn't what he expected, at least in his world. And as he tries to spread this information, how was my phone, sir? What how will the governments or the powers that be react to that, and how will his loved ones react to that? How will the people who are closest to them, will they think he's gone bonkers? Those who know, what will they do to quiet him? And how can you quiet someone who is powered by the sun? That is the story of flat. What I wanted to also do was touch on the flat Earth. Sort of touches on some biblical themes, and I myself am a Christian, but I don't try to write books to beat people over the head with my religious beliefs. But there are some themes in flat Earth that are biblical, that I will touch on slightly, and I think you can enjoy it either way. If you're not even paying attention, you might not even realize they're there, but they might point you in certain directions or certain scriptures or things like that. But the concept is very much a journey of self-discovery, and what happens when you do step into some new information, when you are enlightened, or where you find a new faith or of sorts, and those around you are not receptive of it. That's the story of flat. So
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's great to have something portrayed, like you said. You're not trying to beat people over the head with it. I mean, myself, I've been a Christian for 23 years, and coming to this revelation was just so massive for me. And one I find so incredibly amazing about this conspiracy, in the seeking of truth, people are waking up to the fact that there is a creator. There is, and that's an amazing thing to see. I can't tell you how many stories or emails or even phone calls I've had with people that have said, I'm opening the Bible for the first time in my life, because I know there's a God and I want to get to know him. So I think even just presenting this and showing that there is a uniqueness to the world, that a lot of the heliocentric universe type lies they've fed us for so long, feed in, basically destroying our worth, teaching us that we're just accidents, that we're random, we're just floating around in space. Really, there's nothing that's unique or special about us. We're a cosmic accident. And I think, whether, you go to the full spectrum of getting into flat Earth, or questioning the shape of the Earth, even starting with just looking at the difference between heliocentric model and geocentric model. When you understand that, there's a possibility they've been lying about us flying around the sun and everything they say, because we know, as a lot of Christians that will be listening to this program, we've known for a long time their lies with evolution. And it's been very easy to expose those. So if they've lied about evolution, is it possible that is it possible that they might have lied about our cosmology? And I think that people are waking up and looking into it and starting to find out that there's a real hatred towards the Bible, towards God, really trying to destroy the foundations of the Bible. So for me and my channel, Celebrate Truth, it's all about kind of representing, the biblical truth of what's going on, whether you're talking about, in Joshua, when it's talking about commanding the sun and the moon to stop over specific places. I mean, it didn't say Earth stop. It actually says the sun and the moon stopped. Therefore, biblically speaking, these luminaries are actually orbiting. They're moving. But we've been taught that no, the sun, doesn't move. We orbit the sun. And if you follow it back throughout history, you'll find that, Copernicus, and even before that, there was a lot of this warring going on, but it really took hold with Copernicus and most of the Darwinian theories of science. And a lot of our modern day sciences spawned from a very hatred in changing the order on what was, scientifically known in those days. So I guess we've got to a point now where, science is masqueraded to a point where all their theories are fact, yet, they're still called theories: theory of evolution, the theory of gravity, the theory of relativity. These are not scientific, these are theories. And yet we're taught in schools that this is fact. There's no debate, and I think that's the important thing. So having a comic like Flat, just exposing people to a different world, because I don't know, but I would say almost every comic I've ever seen or read, it's got universes and it's got, balls, and, when it comes to the Earth. So this is the first time ever presenting the Earth as something different. And what does it look like? How does the world react when the hero is trying to expose his findings? And again, I guess we're seeing that when we're trying to, do our quest for truth. And you mentioned some of your comic buddies, how is their initial reaction just even coming out with a fictional comic called Flat?
My sanity was questioned. I had emails checking on my health. But no, my sanity was questioned. The conversations became vitriolic. There was venom in the words, and I was surprised because we are comic book creators. We talk about parallel universes and aliens coming down with the key to creation, and we talk about someone. It amazes me because even outside the realm of comic creators, we can have someone say, there's this thing called
sorry to interject, Vince. I just wanted to announce that we've actually fulfilled the Kickstarter. It's now over $4,000, so it is a reality.
I see it. Oh yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's exciting, man. It's done. So yeah, with 7 days to go. So yeah, awesome. Sorry about that. Awesome. Yeah, keep talking.
Definitely. If you can, pledge. Kickstarter is a crowdfunding platform. It connects people with projects. If you happen to like the project, you can pledge a certain amount and receive certain backer rewards. The pledge is not instantaneous. It comes out, for mine, it comes out when the project ends. Mine is March 10th. Then you'll get an email saying whatever you pledged, the amount you pledged for will come out today. And it gives you that last chance to say yay or nay. And it's an all for nothing thing. If you don't make goal, none of the pledges are taken. They don't count. But if you do make goal, they give everyone fair warning, and they'll take the pledge out of whatever card or account you placed there before. And it has helped thousands of projects. It's a very trustworthy site. Kickstarter has been around for about a good 7 or 8 years now. And but yeah, if you go to Kickstarter, in the search bar, just type in Flat, and the comic will pop up at the bottom. And you can get the digital copy for $5. You can get the the card game, which is amazing. You get printed covers, you can get a special edition comic and so forth. But this is only going to be issue 1. I think there's going to be room for a few more issues. Who knows how this goes? But we're going to see what the fan feedback is and go from there. But what I was saying is that even outside the realm of comic book creators, you can take just your average Joe and you can tell him, look, I believe there's a quantum theory. There's about 11 other dimensions and somewhere, or an unlimited or endless amount of other parallel dimensions with copies of you in it doing different things. And this one, you're a mountain biker, and this one, you're a lawyer. And people will be, that's interesting. They're open to it. You can tell them that, there's probably some precipice of which creation folds back on itself, and we can see the fingers of creation create cosmic dust clouds where planetary systems come out of, right? And people are willing to accept that, but the moment you say, well, the earth is flat or it could be, oh no, that's impossible, that's outrageous. You can talk to them about the devil himself. I had a few friends who had some in comic books you meet a whole bunch of different people, and had a few friends who either they were into magic or dark arts or something like that, so they had this whole occultic background, and they one famous comic book writer is a gentleman in England. I forget his name, but he's a self admitting black magic artist or something like that. And I guess it's some subculture within comics. But you can tell those people about, well, maybe the earth is flat, and as they're crossing their chicken bones and throwing hexes in the air, they'll say, no, that's crazy, that's outrageous, that's outrageous. And I don't, it just amazes me that we can't even be open-minded to the concept. One of the things that I was raised Baptist, and my mother was the type of mother that made me go to Sunday school every Sunday, and I would walk to Sunday school, and they would get there for church later. And I never understood everything as a child, but as I got older, when I joined the military and I was away from home, and the only thing I had was my Bible with me. It was the first time I read the Bible from front to back. And when I read it from front to back, a whole new world opened up to me. Things that the pastors just don't touch on Sunday service, and that level of I hate to use the words like science fiction. I hate to use that word, but the things they spoke about between the great wars, the sons of God, the Nephilim, the flood trying to cleanse the earth, these the Merkabahs and the chariots with the wheels upon wheels, and this is the stuff that I was reading in comic books, and I saw it in the Bible. And when I saw in my mind, I was able to see that. And when I saw that in the Bible, it made me wake up and realize there's a story here that's not told. And there's a level of excitement and intrigue and a mysterious past that lay within this earth that these people witnessed, that they wrote about, that they took the time and the money to write these scribes and these codices. They weren't inexpensive to make, and it took a lot of time. So when you see Jesus quoting extra biblical text, and you're wondering, what is he talking about? Where are these books? It just lit a fire in me that I think anyone who is intellectually curious, who they don't even have to be seeking, the heart of Christ. They could just be open-minded. That once you hear this information, you'd have to say, well, where can I find more of that? And what shocks me is when I tell people about uh, the the earth and the firmament, and maybe it's not as round as we thought, that they're not curious, that their first thought is, you're crazy, don't speak about it anymore.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the response from a lot of people is just quick on ridicule, mocking. Really, they're not coming back with really solid arguments. And again, that's the thing is like for a lot of truthers or people that are just wanting to investigate what is truthful. It seems to me like there's been a lot of programming in place for people to get so upset so quickly. It's like they can't let go of the ball they're holding. They can't let go of their worldview. But it makes sense in a lot of ways because I mean, all of us, we were brought up, with the globe in our classroom. It's everything we've known. I mean, from the movies, from like Star Wars and Star Trek. And I mean, we love space. And I mean, this was science fiction that was basically given to us as real science. Unfortunately, growing up, even from, an early age, we're going to be taking these ideas and incorporating into our world, especially when we're told this is reality. This is what, is real. But when we find out, and again, you brought up the Bible, and again, for me, with the pursuit of truth, I always look at the Bible as my final authority in all things. And again, over and over and over again, there was just issue after issue. I mean, nowhere can you find anywhere where it's a spinning ball flying through space. I mean, you can't even find a verse to support the Earth moving whatsoever. What you can find is that the sun, moon, and stars all move. So that's the curious thing, with a lot of people that are studying the Bible or looking into it and then saying, yeah, okay, I believe in the spinning ball flying through space. Well, biblically speaking, there's nothing to support that. And I think it's important for anyone, like you said, in the search for truth, understanding in reality, there's a truth, but spiritually, there is a truth. And I always say at the end of my videos on my channel, Celebrate Truth, is John 14:6. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So again, he made some incredible statements here. He didn't just say what I'm telling you is truthful. He said, I am the embodiment of truth. So I always tell people, if you're going to do any type of investigation, and you can do an investigation on the shape of the earth or what's in the sky, but ultimately the most important investigation that a person can do is really search out the truthful claims of Jesus, because either he's a lunatic, he's a liar, or he truly is Lord, the Son of God. And if he is truly what he said he was, then I mean, it will change your life. Reading everything that he said will have profound effect on your life. So again, I'm excited, like I said, to be in this investigation, to be part of this revelation that's taking place in all the people that are doing experiments around the world, because over and over it's confirming that the Bible was true. And yet, man's ideas, philosophies, sciences that they've been telling us were reality, there's major problems. So it's one thing to come up with a theory. It's another thing to say this is true and this is real science. And I guess that's the biggest problem with a lot of people. But again, you'll find that you just mentioned the two words, flat earth, and people go berserk. They go crazy. So, maybe we need to start talking about, a different term or whatever. I go in the Global Lie documentary that I put out a month ago. I title myself an enclosed creationist. So for the most part, when I say to people, oh, I'm an enclosed creationist. Oh, what does that mean? Oh, well, let me tell you, they're more open-minded. But if you go to someone and say, hey, I believe the earth is flat, they're like, whoa, what in the world's going on? So I think it's important that we all kind of understand that. But having a resource like flat is so incredibly important because again, I think it's great for children, it's great for adults. I mean, who doesn't like comic books? And I mean, with the influx of all these superhero movies from Marvel and DC, and to create a comic with such a new unique approach, but also having that truth in there, that someone even taking it from a fictional point of view can say, well, wait a minute, they brought up a good point about NASA, or they brought up a good point. And I mean, you'll talk a little bit more about the trouble that the hero gets in while
Yeah,
he tries to expose the reality and the true Earth to the world.
yeah. The flat starts off with an average Joe, just like all of us, and how we are all are exposed to the conditioning from birth, that we live on a globe. We live on a globe. You see mobiles above carriages and cribs that have little planets spinning. In kindergarten, the teacher shows you the globe, and even as a child, I remember this, and I think everyone remembers this. They say, "What is that?" And the teacher says, "This is where you live." And you're like, well, how do you stay on the bottom? We all, even if we never said it out loud, we question it in our minds. It didn't make any sense to us, but it was conditioned, and he is conditioned, and he's just a normal Joe. He grows up and he lives a normal life, never ever questioning where he lives. And I think we don't realize how some religious beliefs are brought onto us, or that we just simply absorb and we don't realize it's religious. The scientific method, as I was taught, was that it was something you start off with a hypothesis, and you go through the steps of trying to prove it. Once you can prove it, and then you can duplicate it, and others can duplicate it, then it goes from a theory to a fact. And yet, I don't know the shape of the globe. I think none of us do for sure, because it hasn't been presented in such a way where we can definitively know for sure. But we have been presented a package where we take it for granted, and we have to realize that certain things like gravity, even though we believe we feel it, we see its effects, it's still a theory. I realize that the guys you see on the science channels, they're quantum theorists, where they're talking about different realities, space, time, and those are theories. It's just like you and I saying, I think my son because there's gremlins, and you're able to discern, oh well, the gremlins aren't real. But when the guy who's wearing a suit and tie tells you, I think we're missing a second from this year because a tug from this deepest dark abyss in Zeta sector is pulling time from us, you say, oh wow, that's so deep, and you never question it. Well, this is what the hero of Flat goes through, until one day the truth, or his truth and his reality, smacks him in his face, and he has to wake up. He has to wake up, just like Neo in the Matrix. He has to wake up, and my friends all ask me, well, why would someone lie about the shape of the Earth? Why would NASA lie? Why would anyone lie? Where you are is very, very, very important. Everything else is sort of based off of where you are. If you were knocked out, I heard this the other day, if you were knocked out and you wake up, the very first thing you ask is, where am I? Because where you are will dictate what you do next. And what your purpose is there. If you wake up in a Spanish jail, you have a whole bunch of thoughts going on in your head. If you wake up in your bed, you have another set of thoughts. And so where we are is very important, and it will tell us what our purpose is. And if you want to strip someone of their purpose, their uniqueness, or maybe their divine destiny, you hide where they are. The concept of Flat is it's a fictional world, and with a lot of the great stories that I grew up on, like Twilight Zone and Alfred Hitchcock and Star Trek, I realized that those were like moral plays, they they offered you a vehicle to suspend your disbelief in and travel into their world, but they were teaching you a lesson or a moral lesson as you were being entertained. So when this hero goes through this awakening and he realizes that, wow, I was asleep all this time, and wow, let me look around. Why is it I can see the starlight from those stars that are 40 million billion miles away? you know, you know, why why is it that my cell phone really doesn't use these satellites, and there's cell phone towers everywhere, but yet it receives GPS, global positioning system data. You know, man, that sun is hot. You know, it, now I've learned a few things about the sun, but I'll tell you what I first thought. I was like, man, that sun is hot. It's so hot I can feel it on my neck. I go outside, and it starts forest fires. Man, Mercury and Venus must be burning up. You know, you know, things like that. The other day I went out to vote, and not a buddy, just someone I met in line. He wanted to take pictures, of him voting. And we looked up in the clouds, and he says, "Oh, it's a great day. God is shining on us." We looked in the clouds, and there was a concentration of light, and there were sunbeams coming down in a triangular fashion, pointing up to one point of light in the clouds. And like the light was forming a pyramid coming down from the clouds, right? The pyramid being the top point in the clouds, the broad base of the light shining down on us. And I was like, man, why is that light radiating from one source as though the sun is just miles above the clouds, and it's not, 90 million miles away? you know, and once you start to wake up and look around you, you just start to see, well, some things don't add up. Some things just don't add up. I don't know why they don't, but they don't.
That's a good point, because things do not add up. I mean, they've given us numbers like the sun being 93 million miles away, and then you're getting other, like we're talking about the stars being light years away, and just all the numbers. Again, it just comes down to like evolution with these numbers. They come up with these astronomical, insane numbers, and then if you really in reality think about it, it doesn't make sense. I mean, I always use this analogy. It's like you build a really nice dining room, and then you want to find a light to light the dining room. Are you going to find something that's a million times bigger than the dining room itself? I mean, it makes no sense. And I mean, the Bible's very clear that God put lights in the sky for times and seasons, but he put the sun and the moon, one for day, one for night. So if you're thinking for a light for the day and a light for the night, why would you need something that is millions of times bigger than the object that you're lighting? We don't use that logic anywhere here on Earth, but yet we believe this. We believe that it's just a small, sun, really. I mean, you're getting into like Betelgeuse, or you're getting into like, other ones. I mean, we have a small little one. We're told that all the stars are suns. And again, it's important for people just to, instead of just hearing, what people are saying, look into it. Look at the reality. I mean, you brought up the sun, Vince, and I mean, you have major problems when you see hot spots on the top of clouds.
Oh,
If it was 93 million miles away, there would be no hot spot. So again, we can get into the horizon, we can get into all these sort of things. But let's just say, for example, that we both agree that when you bring up flat Earth, people just tune out. They go, crazy. And I mean, if you want to bring out I like how Rob Skiba says it, but he goes, if you want to bring out the inner psycho in someone, just mention flat Earth. I
yeah.
think it's really funny. So what I say is, okay, let's just put that aside for a second, and let's just say, okay, let's look at what we've been taught. And could they have lied? And really, if you look at the heliocentric model that we're all spinning around the sun versus everything else is spinning around the Earth, again, you're going to see with great documentaries like The Principle that have come out using tons of science to support the fact that, it can go either way. I mean, so while they're saying, nope, there's only one way, look into the difference between heliocentrism and geocentrism, and you're going to find some incredible things. I mean, like in the documentary, they talk about being off by a factor of like 1 with 120 zeros after it. They admit that in cosmology, they have no clue. That's why they're bringing up dark matter or dark energy. But again, for the listeners and for people that are watching, let's just, for example, what would it be like to basically go into the world of flat? Like what exactly would happen? Maybe mention the storyline, but also, how the authorities in a fictional way, and we understand that this is fictional. You and I would agree that there's a lot
Yeah,
of truth
yeah.
being presented. But let's just say that people are listening to this broadcast or watching, and they're saying, okay, I just want to put myself in this world, in this comic. What exactly, would it look like if they were to be bystanders and watching how the hero starts to expose and how the world responds to the hero?
Oh, flat is in modern day, so it's just like today. Um, the streets are busy. The news is on. Uh, there's wars and rumors of wars. There's, people trying to get from A to B. Um, People are rude on the streets. Horns are honking, and our main hero, he's just a delivery driver stuck in traffic after having a life that we have all explained. He grew up, he's seen the globe in elementary school. He went to the planetarium in high school. He has the same education as all of us, but above him, in the world of flat, as you rise up and the density changes, as you go higher and higher into the 7 layers of light in his world, uh, there is a war brewing. And the celestial bodies, the luminaries, are at war. So the lights in the sky are at war with one another. And 1/3 have already fallen. And one of the last to hold the line is the lights of Orion's belt. We see it at night. We look up. We see the 3 stars. That's Orion's belt. He is the belt of the hunter, as they say. I believe he's chasing 7 sisters or something. I forget the storyline of the astrological storyline of Orion, but he's supposed to be the great hunter. But the personification of Orion's belt is there in the 7 layers of light, high above this world, and he's surrounded by these unilluminated lights, and they have taken the form of beings with armor and swords, and they want to strike him down. So as he vows to not fall, as he vows to be to remain an illuminary, he's jumped upon. They seize him and they strike him down. And although his physical form, the things with the lights, they can change form. They can change from this incandescence into a fleshly form, but they strike him in his incandescent form, and he falls. He falls from the 7 layers of light down through the denser layers, down into the atmosphere, down into our the busy traffic ridden street below, where our hero's trying to get through traffic, like we all do when we wake up trying to commute. And his truck is hit by this comet, you could say, and it's a loud boom. And when the smoke and dust settles, there's a huge crater, and all the cars are blown aside. The entire city block is destroyed, but yet our hero climbs out. He's no longer the average driver. He looks like the guy on the cover, flat. And what has happened is the essence of Orion's belt has been transferred to him, which is why he has the 3 stars on his costume. And as he begins to digest what has happened to him or process what has happened to him. He realizes that he has an assortment of abilities that only the luminaries have had. And this leads him to, as I say, realizing the shape of his world. And he has a choice to make. And he meets a couple of people along the way to help guide him. I don't know if I should say this one, but but a couple of people you could say shared biblical ties. Nothing major that you would know, no Jesus or anything like that, but but a couple of people from biblical texts appear to him and help him try to make this transition. And as he goes and he tries to realize if he's sane, if he's still alive, he meets several people who are going to be in his corner, from religious people to reporters to his family. And as he tries to bring this information to more and more people up the chain, he's met with resistance. And the world sees a savior, but the message that he starts to portray is rejected. And what happens when you are sent to save the world, but they don't receive you? And what happens if the powers that be know the truth, but they won't do anything to help you? This is the construct of flat. And now I see this all takes place sort of like in the first issue, but as I've called Rob a couple of times, and even though we've kind of just met over the last few weeks, I've bugged him, and as I sit at home, I've been thinking of how the storyline could continue even further and further and further, as maybe the world is not ready to be awakened. Maybe you have to awaken people individually. And this is what Orion, the star flat, begins to realize, or maybe he realizes. And so maybe you change people through one act of kindness at a time. And much like in The Matrix, some people are not ready to awake. And I think this book, much like what Jesus used, is a parable. And it can be, you can see it for a farmer planting seeds, or you can see it as something much deeper.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic thing because, like I said, I mean, Jesus used parables to convey truth all the time. Oh, sorry, it's just echoing. I'll just wait till it goes away. There it goes. Yeah, so Jesus obviously used parables, and he was amazing, obviously, at illustrating truth, through stories. And again, that's why flat to me is so important, because even like with the hero Orion, going up into the sky and basically reaching the firmament. And again, here's a very biblical, structure. And again, this has been, taken a big revival. And I think with a lot of people, even if looking at Genesis 1, 6-8, and God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And I mean, a lot of people have looked at that verse and they've come up with ice canopies and all sorts of things, but really you're talking about two massive bodies of water above us and below us. And this is my opinion, but I think that if the physical firmament was not in place, we would all drown. I think it's very clear when you get into Noah's flood, when you get into extra biblical accounts like First Enoch, talking about the windows. I mean, this is in the Bible. I was looking at my wife the other day just to make sure, because I've been doing a lot of interviews and talking about the windows of heaven opening up and the fountains of the deep breaking open, and also rain from the clouds. So we have three sources of water to create the worldwide flood in Noah's day, and it's very clear that even afterwards, it says that when it stopped, it says that the rain from the clouds stopped, the windows of heaven were shut, and the fountains. You got three sources of water. So again, when you're getting into the firmament, and people for longest time we're trying to figure this out with a scientific heliocentric worldview, from a globe point of view, how do you put this into context? But if you're dealing with a enclosed structure, if you're dealing, with, as Job 37:18 says, has thou with him spread out the sky, which is strong and as molten looking glass? I mean, it's talking about the firmament, the sky, the expanse is strong, and it's like molten looking glass. So it has like a transparency, but it's solid. Over and over and over again, you can see it. Ezekiel talks about above the firmament. Over their heads was the likeness of a throne. They see basically Christ sitting on the throne in Ezekiel, but it literally says the firmament that was over their heads, and above there was a throne, right? You can get into even, Psalms 148:4, where it talks about praise him, ye heaven of heavens, and ye waters that be above the heavens. So a lot of people say, well, when Noah's flood happened, all the water drained out. But you've got books after the flood still talking about big bodies of water above us. So I think that even at the beginning of flat, like at the very beginning, when he does receive his powers and he goes up, and all of a sudden, dink, he basically reaches the firmament, which I think is a very biblical, analogy, getting into the understanding of looking down. How far can man get up? And again, we've got NASA and we've got all these things, showing us all these pictures. But I personally believe, and it might sound really crazy to a lot of people, but again, I guess time will tell. But I don't believe that we can get up high enough to see exactly how big the earth is. And Job, it actually says, who of you, can measure the breadth of the earth? Well, I thought we had it all figured out. We've got the weight, we've got the mass, we got like the distance, we've got everything mapped out. Yet Job, God is clearly saying, look, none of you are going to know these things. It says, who can see the pillars that the earth rests upon? Basically none of us. So there are going to be mysteries that we'll never really understand. And I think that's what's the beautiful thing in a fictional comic such as Flat. Here we can explore that world. We can actually be, we can kind of join him in his journey going up and kind of seeing what maybe could take place, but also the reality of how the world will react. And I think it was really important that you brought that up, Vince, because what we're seeing, how the world is reacting to us, even just talking about this, if it's so crazy, let us just be crazy. But why is there so much attack? Why is there so much name calling? Why do people get so upset with this concept? If it's so silly, just leave it alone. But you have people like dedicating their whole life to coming on to like chats like this or videos. They're going to spend all their time and energy. I mean, if it's so silly, leave it alone. But it's nice to have a comic that we can kind of explore. We can kind of see the reactions that we're facing every day while we investigate the truth.
And he gets to ask those questions like, whether he asks his companion or he asks the powers that be, how is it if the earth is, all my life I've been taught the earth is a globe, and that the air and the winds and the oxygen, the things that make our atmosphere cling to it, but yet space is a vacuum. How is it that our atmosphere is not ripped into the suction of space, into the vacuum of space? How is it? Is there something holding it here? Some physical structure? We use gravity as an excuse, but yet, we say gravity is so strong, it holds buildings. Right now, wherever you are on this planet, there is some city or structure directly underneath you on the opposite side of the planet. And gravity holds all that together. But yet, you start a fire and the smoke just lifts up into the air. Or a butterfly flaps its wings and flies away. Gravity holds the moon in place, but you can fill a balloon up with helium and it just flies away. So why are the clouds and the atmosphere stuck to the planet? Especially if they're fighting the pull of the vacuum of space. We've all seen these space movies where someone opens a airlock and you're just immediately sucked out into the vacuum of space. I was trying to find this, Robin, maybe you can find it, but this gentleman, a friend of mine, is a he has a brilliant mind. He's a programmer. He's a game designer. And I told him, people are starting to question the fact that rockets can work in space. And so I showed them this video where this gentleman has filled up a balloon and he placed it on the back of like a car, like a toy car, and he let the air out and it jets the car across the table. And then he puts the car on the table, fills the balloon up, sticks it on the back of the car, it's taped, and he puts a vacuum at the end of the balloon where the air is coming out. And the car just sits there because the air is being released into the vacuum and the car is sitting there. And I said, people are saying that rockets are pushing against the atmosphere. That's why they move. And so he told me, no, it's the thrust of it coming out of the engine, and it's the thrust that the air is pushing against all sides of the balloon, and it's only finding this one escape, and that escape is pushing the rocket forward. And so he dismissed the video. But then I began thinking about that video, and I wanted to show it. But if it's just the thrust, he said because the vacuum is sucking the air away, it's not fair. I said, well, if it's just the thrust of the balloon, it shouldn't matter where the air is going. The rocket should just move forward because it's just the thrust of the air coming out, not that it has to have something to push against. And the whole void of space and the question of radiation, the Van Allen belts that they found now that make us question whether or not life can pass through it safely or not, brings up this whole, is there a limit to the sky?
Yeah.
Is there a firmament?
That term, the sky's the limit.
The sky's the limit. Is there a glass ceiling? Is there a dome? The Huron Flat does touch the firmament. And it's what stops him. And that's what makes him turn around and look back. And he has to ask these questions. What is that? What is that barrier? And when you look at our space program, we seem to be the only country that has figured out how to put a man on the moon. You would think Russia or China or Japan or just Jamaica. Shoot, the Jamaican bobsled team. You would think somebody would have figured out how to do what we did.
Oh, but you'll hear it all the time. I used to hear this even before Flat Earth. I was definitely a person that did not believe they landed on the moon. So for a lot of people in the conspiratorial circles, that's way out there. You don't believe they landed on the moon? Of course they did. But the one thing I would hear all the time, the objection was, well, we don't need to go back. We already went there. And I'm like, are you kidding me? It's been almost 50 years, no other country. I mean, what about the first woman on the moon? All these sort of things. But again, people they come up with these knee-jerk reactions, almost like they're programmed just to say, because Obama came out and he said, look, I've been hearing a lot of people saying we should go back to the moon, but really, we've already been there. We don't need to go. And he comes out and everyone just, buys it. And they're like, that makes sense. Yeah, let's nod our head. That really makes sense. It's been 50 years. And, when we went up in the 60s, we discovered everything we'll ever need to know about the moon. We took all the samples. Technology's only increased 100-fold. There's so many more tools and instrumentation that they could do. But the reality is this: technology has caught up to the moon. You and I can grab a P900. I have a Coolpix P900 camera, which is absolutely incredible. For $600, you can zoom in very close on the moon. So they know that basically, we could call foul on any type of attempt. That's why they're saying, oh, we're going to go to Mars. We're going to go to Pluto. Well, technology will catch up to that. They're going to go further off. But Mars just got canceled, and the ISS, they're talking about tearing that thing down because every day there's people exposing more and more on the fraud that's going on. And people say, well, there's something up there. Well, I'm not debating the fact that something might be up there. The question is there men in it? The question is, how far can men go? If men have not been to the moon, I say this all the time to people, but the moon is supposedly 240,000 miles away. Right? So if you actually look this up, since, the 60s, the furthest that man has gone, according to NASA, is 400 miles. Does that make any sense? In almost 50 years, the furthest that they can go is 400 miles. Something's not right here. So it's like, start looking into these things. And again, it might seem crazy at first. You'd be like, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. You just don't believe anything. I get accused all the time of saying, you just hate science. No, I love real science. Empirical science is about observation. It's about experimentation, something that can be repeated, observed. Again, this is not we're not bashing science. What we're bashing at is scientism, this belief, these theories that have escalated to a point where you cannot debate them. It is fact. And if you even question them, you're considered, crazy. It's like, of course, we've got this all figured out. But the reality is they haven't got things figured out. And again, going back to the comic Flat, I think that we're going to see a lot of parallels in how NASA in the comic, or the space agency that's in the comic, the UN or the world governments, how they're responding, how NASA's going to respond. We're going to see a lot of parallels in this comic. So I think it's going to be fun for people to take that journey, with Orion in, basically discovering whether it's, wait a minute, I'm seeing some lies here. NASA just, said something. I was just up there. No, that's not true, right? Or he's looking in, at a Bible verse and saying, hey, it's been here all along. And then other people can open up a Bible and see, hey, the Bible did say this. If anything, maybe the Bible is depicting Flat's world. It's kind of neat. I can open it up and I can kind of bring myself into that.
With the advent of comic book movies and comics being all over, I'm open to all types of input. Rob and I are definitely open to all types of input. We would love to have this series go on past the first issue for sure. And we're always looking for new ways to introduce new subjects and concepts that will pertain to the flat Earth, or things that you might question. So there, even on the Kickstarter, there is a way where you can sort of join creative calls, group calls where we discuss the book and so forth. But yeah, Rob, like one of the things I was, Bobby, sorry, I'm totally.
For anyone that's just joining us right now, I'm the host, Robbie Davidson. We're here with my special guest, Vince White, the creator of the Flat comic book.
Yeah, what I was going to say was, about the whole moon thing is that, we are a capitalist society. There's nothing that we don't take and just abuse. We find coal in one area, we're gonna frack it, we're gonna drill it, and we go to the moon. And I remember as a kid, they were selling plots of land on the moon. I remember they were selling stars where you could put your name on the stars. Okay, the fact that we went to the moon and we haven't gone back, it baffles me, because we're talking about going to Mars, and the perfect launching pad would be the moon. If we had the ISS space station up there and we know the shuttle docks up there, then it would just be a hop, skip, and a jump to the moon to go ahead and start building a space station there. It'll probably be less dangerous than the ISS. It'll be a lot more stable. For the simple fact, and I don't think a lot of people realize this too, the simple fact is that we don't really have any images of the Earth. All the images that you've seen are computer generated or painted, or what they call composites. You go to Google, type in Earth, picture of the Earth. You'll see several of them. None of them will look the same. There'll be different colors, different hues, different sizes of the continents. But besides that, click further onto that image, find the actual page that is on, and you will see this is an artist rendition, or this is a composite of. It will not say this is the actual picture of the Earth. Okay, out of 50 years, we have what I think 1 or 2 pictures that they say were taken by the Apollo astronauts, and they have been debunked because there's anomalies in the photo where you can see they have copy and pasted things. Why not have a camera on the moon where it's pointing back at the Earth? And I told my friends this. They say, why? Well, we could study global warming from, outer space. We could debunk it and say if it's real or not. We can see how earthquakes look on the Earth itself. We can see weather patterns, how they take shape on a global scale. There's all types of reasons why we want to have the Earth filmed, but yet that doesn't exist. The whole satellite controversy. Are satellites real? I don't know. They're said to exist in the thermosphere, which is the hottest layer of our atmosphere. the radiation alone will probably heat the components up, destroy the machinery, and they're not necessary. If you're trying to send a beam back up and down to a satellite, and that satellite is just off just by a little bit, I mean that equates to miles on the Earth. If it's off just the tad, um, whereas they say we can bounce signals off the ionosphere. That brings me to Marconi, the gentleman that sent the first radio signal across the Atlantic back in like the late 1800s or something like that. They told him it would never work because of the curvature of the Earth, but it did. Then later they said, oh, well, you bounced the signal off the ionosphere. Well, if we can bounce signals off the ionosphere, why have satellites? And if we have satellites, why are there cell towers every time we turn a corner? These are the things that they just you take them one at a time, and they don't add up. We haven't been back to the moon. The astronauts were supposed to be in pressurized suits, but yet they have folds and pleats and their costumes. They say the sun, we see the moon, it's glowing, but when we see the Apollo astronauts walking across it, it's not glowing like I see it. The moon is unbelievably bright at times. Another thing I noticed is that we went to the movies the other day, and the moon was a full moon, beautiful, bright. Drove from the theater to the house, and the moon was a different size. And you would think, 2 blocks or three or 4 blocks shouldn't change the size of the moon if it's that far away. And I've seen it with the sun. I've seen the sun way heavy and large and loom large in the sky, and then either we move locations or later in the day slightly, it's a totally different size. And if it was that huge and that far away, it shouldn't change size because of a few blocks. It's things like that just don't make sense. And
No, it doesn't make sense. I mean, in the year 2016, we don't have any. I'm sorry, it's just okay. But in the year 2016, we don't have any HD video footage of the spinning ball, the entire spinning ball, in its entirety. There is none in existence. I mean, for people to look at that and go, that's not strange. We're supposed to have, how many satellites or all these probes. And yet, we have the Hubble telescope that shows us billions of galaxies, billion light years away, but yet they can't point it at the Earth. Just everything, when it comes to like going out, into space, we never have a video showing leaving our atmosphere into space. There's not one video anywhere that shows that. They show a rocket going up and then it ends up going sideways and then it just continues on until you can't see it anymore. That's the reality. So again, you're looking at it and sometimes it's hard not to giggle or laugh when you look at some of the things that are so incredibly insane that they're pulling off, and yet we have believed it. It's not just other people have believed them. You and I, at one point, we believed it too. We didn't really look into it too much, but we just looked at it as like, yeah, there they go. They're going into space. And one day, we're going to have, we're going to be like Star Wars and we're going to be traveling different planets. And how cool is that going to be, some time in the future. But again, that's the whole thing, is it's bringing science fiction into science reality, which really science is nothing more than science fiction. I mean, a lot of the ideas that even NASA started doing and in space travel started from even the science fiction genre, looking into a lot of things. You can do research on it and find out how much, the correlation between the two and how they connect together. So yeah, I just think it's one of those things. I mean, we could talk all night, Vince, about just everything that just doesn't make sense. So again, it's not like we're saying 100% of the time, yes, we know, and we've got a proven model, and but we're saying there's some serious questions to address. There's things that really, don't add up when you're looking at, distances, when you're looking at why the moon, I mean, you brought up the moon, which is a really good example because again, there's people all over the world that are doing this. I mean, they're buying like a Santec laser, thermometer, and they're testing, and what they're finding, and this is conclusive, they're finding that basically sunlight is warm and moonlight is cold. And they're finding that not only do you, like in the sunlight, you're hot and you go in the shade to cool down. But the opposite is taking place in moonlight. It's actually colder in the moonlight. And when you go in the shade, you warm up. And then people got really kind of experimental and they're like, hey, wait a minute. When I magnify sunlight, I can burn paper or I can burn ants. So what would happen if I magnified moonlight? Well, people are seeing differences of like 12 to 14 to 15 degrees difference when you magnify moonlight. I mean, there's going to be some experiments taking place where they hyper magnify moonlight to see if they can start freezing objects. So it's exciting to see all the empirical scientific experiments that people are doing all over the world, because the reality is you can't go out and test space. I mean, the idea that they even knew what space was, they'll say, well, we had anti-gravitational chambers. Yeah, but those things had walls. How do you test that there's no walls in space, So the whole idea, and I go back to like the biblical, and this is kind of something that I've thought of and I've mentioned a few times, but really I had a hard time. I was thinking about all the adjectives for space. It was black, it was dark, it was void, it was nothing, it was a vacuum, it was, all these adjectives. And I started thinking, okay, if God's going to create billions of universes inside space, would it be beautiful? Would it be different colors? Would it have like energy fields to it? All these sort of things. But when I find that it's just black, it's void, it's nothing, it's dark, these are weird adjectives, and we start praising these adjectives, going, oh, God's amazing, look at what he created. But really, it's almost like, could it be that it's a satanic lie where Satan wanted God's creation to start praising his basically imagination? Could it be that basically space is hell? It talks about in the Bible that there is no light in hell. It says it's absolute pitch black. Well, space, there is no light in space. So I started thinking these things. I'm like, very interesting. If you had a really deep-seated hatred and you wanted people to start praising and loving the darkness and the blackness and something that has no light, could you start attaching God to something that wasn't even God made? So again, these are questions, but I just look at it and I'm like, I don't know. You look at the earth and just look at God's creation, and it's like vibrant, and it's colorful, and it's diverse, and it's, and then you got space. It's just nothing, black, dark. It does nothing.
This is something that I always I had to realize, which helps me realize that the unbelievable, the unthinkable, the thing that you cannot imagine, the thing that's the most absurd, has to exist, which confirms that there is a creator beyond all understanding. And even within the flat universe, it's probably it's the case. And this is here are the logical examples that I had is that, okay, one of these things are true. Taking the heliocentric model and the Earth moving around the sun, okay, either this universe goes on forever and ever and ever and ever, which is impossible, an impossible concept. Right? If something go on forever and ever and ever, have no end, is almost magical. All right, but that has to exist, or that space is finite and something exists outside of it, which is completely unthinkable, right?
It has to be, Vince. It has to be, biblically speaking. I mean, anyone listening or watching this, if they're coming at it biblically minded, and if you're going to look at the Bible being the authority for all truth, you have to understand that nothing is infinite other than God himself. The idea of attaching an infinite quality to anything in creation is almost blasphemous, in my opinion, because God is the only one that's infinite. Everything else would be finite. I mean, time itself was created in an enclosed creation. It's linear. We can see, I mean, God can literally see the start to the finish to the middle. But to basically attach anything, whether it's your universe, anything that's created outside of God, to attach it to any eternal or an infinite quality, I think is kind of another satanic lie.
Yes, and you're right. But either extremes, either extreme has to it employs the implausible, which means that the implausible has to exist. And the ultimate implausible for many people is that there is a creator. And when you say that either space is infinite or space is finite, those things are just so wild. But one of those two has to exist, because we exist somewhere, and that somewhere is either boundless or it's finite. And what houses the universe is awesome, and if it's finite, what houses it has to be awesome, and if it's boundless, what houses it has to be awesome. Okay, so we know that the awesomeness exists. All right, the awesomeness exists, and it just proves the point. It just proves the point that something beyond our understanding is out there, and when you look at the pure perfection of life. How I asked someone this the other day. So who believes in evolution? And I don't knock it completely, but I do say, well, if we came from a primordial ooze, where did that primordial ooze go, and how come there's no new life created from it? Not new species, but brand new life. If we're carbon based, but why aren't we seeing electrical based, or why aren't we seeing why aren't multiple plasma based? Why aren't we seeing multiple life forms come from multiple forms of primordial soup? Because we've given, even if you give the odds and the numbers, there's a good chance that life would spring again, especially if it sprung once. And I just don't see it. Our universe is mathematical. You can see the structure and intelligence behind it. It's amazing how things are perfectly placed. It's like we run like a clock.
Yeah, no, we do. I mean, it's been very intricately designed. I mean, there is an intelligence behind it. I mean, even getting into our DNA, I mean, they've looked at it as computer code. I mean, you just don't look at your computer and say it just spontaneously existed. You say that someone created it, you know? I mean, like you look at a watch and you know there was a watchmaker. So
Exactly.
these are the things that sometimes people just don't want to look at. And again, when you really get to the heart of it, they want to create a world without any type of accountability. Because if we're just a random accident, sorry, it's just kind of feedback a bit. If there's just that type of, cosmic accident, well, yeah, there's just no significance. There's no, relevancy to anything that we're doing. I mean, we're just going to die. We're just animals.
I would tell listeners as well. There's what we've pointed out it's just the surface of things that do not add up, and once you have so many things that don't add up, they start to form a direction. One of the things is that I found interesting was the stars themselves, and the fact that there really isn't any parallax in the stars. The stars don't overlap or cross one another. In fact, they move in unity. They move as a group. I mentioned Orion's belt, and that formation has existed for thousands and thousands of years. They don't go out of line by even the micro measurements. They don't misalign at all. They move in unison around the North Pole and or the pole star Polaris, and every constellation moves together as though they're moving around us. And you just don't see something drifting away. And when I was a kid, I remember them talking about Columbus, and whether the earth was round. And then later on I hear that we knew it was round for a long time. And I don't know what story is true, but if they were still arguing in the 1970s when I was a kid, and pointing to Columbus, and pointing to people trying to traverse the globe, then I ask, why haven't we, in the flat Earth model, the Antarctic is basically a wall, and in the flat universe, the Antarctic is a wall, much like the wall in the Game of Thrones, and it encloses the Earth. It keeps the waters in. It's like a petri dish, basically. and it's the circle of the earth engraved in the I guess the bedrock under the waters, and the waters have been separated by the firmament above and below, and the wall keeps everything out. Oh, my dog's barking. But circle of the earth, blah blah blah. My question is, I almost lost my train of thought. The question is that why has no one gone over the Antarctic? And I just saw something recently that one company said they have, but they have been brought up on charges for fraud and everything else. But other than that, no one has crossed the Antarctic. We don't fly across it. It's the shortest route between South America and anywhere else, like Australia, places like what is that near Australia? But we don't fly over it, and we say it's too cold.
Yeah.
But yet we've been to the void of space.
Yeah, the thermosphere and like cold and hot temperatures. Oh, sorry.
These things just and when you couple that with the fact that what we experience at the higher and higher you go, even with amateur hot air balloons, the surface of the world appears flat. We can't trust what NASA says because they had people driving buggies on the moon, and 50 years ago, and lost all the telemetry data, lost all the blueprints for the Saturn V rocket. They have all the original footage, and no one can replicate what they've done, and no other country has seemed to be able to do what they've done. So you can't, and all the pictures that they show are composites. So if I kept, what I equate this to, Rob, is that if you met me and I said, I have a mansion in the mountains, and you say, oh, you do? When you first hear it, you might be impressed. And then I show you pictures of it, and every time I show you pictures of it, it's different families in front of it. Never my family, right? just different families. And you've known me for a while now, and time goes on, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. I've never taken you to the mansion in the Alps. I've never flown over there. And after a while, you start saying, wow, all the pictures, I'm starting to find anomalies in the pictures. You never go there. No one else has been there. Every time Virgin Airlines makes a spaceship that can fly out to your mansion in the Alps, it falters and falls down, as though something is stopping it. You start to say, Vince, I'm not believing your story. And I said, well, you know what? I have a mansion on the moon. So I put it further and further away. So I make it harder for you, like we're going to the Mars now instead of moon. I make it harder and harder for you to try and prove what I'm saying is real or not. And this is what I found when I started, researching the whole flat Earth concept, or people questioning the globe. And I just thought it was a very interesting subject. And I thought it was something that was made for comics. It just had to be explored. It had to be something put into a fictional world and have those characters digested, have those readers digested. And the reason why I think this format is awesome is because you can hand that book off to someone, let them read it, and just say it's a good read. And then if something pops between their reading it and their reality, that's great. Maybe they'll come back and say, hey, I saw him fly over the ocean and track the transatlantic cable, and I started wondering, why do we need that cable if we have satellites? And you made me start thinking, Vince, this comic's pretty cool. Besides that, the card game. Did you see the updated pictures of the card game?
I've seen them. I guess I can pull them up, or you can pull them up.
Right there. Yep. uh, some people play Pokemon or Magic. I decided to create a card game with it, where the cards are actual like psyops that are played to cause damage to the public psyche. And like right now, it's showing the wall, the Antarctica. It's basically no one. There's a treaty. I don't. I've heard about this treaty, Rob, but there's a treaty where a multitude of countries, almost 40 some countries,
Yeah, it's like 37.
have come to basically protect the perimeter of Antarctica. We have research stations there, at least on the perimeter, but no one has crossed it. And so the card, when you play it against your opponent, it can cause 40 points of damage to their public psyche. It can cause 80 points of damage to their public psyche. And with the card game, what you're trying to do is weaken your opponent's, mental capacity so he doesn't question the world that he's in. So the comic and the card game, you can they're you can buy them as components of one another, or you can just get the comics separately. But I thought that was a good twist. I tried to create that as like party fun.
Yeah, no, I think it's a nice addition to the comic. Having, oh, sorry, I'm just getting feedback. I don't know if it's Google or I think it's gone away now. But yeah, I think it's a great addition. Like I said, not just doing the comic, but having the card game. Because I mean, there's that Illuminati card game that's out there, which is
Yeah.
caused a lot of buzz and excitement. But having something around this, I think is an exciting way just to start introducing concepts and even if not, just looking at these things and like I said, even looking at this satellite deception, going, what? Satellite deception? Huh, I'm going to look into satellites. Wait a minute, there's some problems, right? Like again, even playing a card game, they're saying, oh, why would there be a deception with satellites? And then they start going to Google and they start typing in real pictures of satellites from space and try to find a real picture of a satellite. I mean, good luck, have fun. You can't really find one. So again, you were bringing up the photos, and again, we can talk about satellites, but I think this is a great way just to start getting people questioning things, and even if they start, looking into, certain things that are in the game or in the comic book, again, because it's presented in our world. Again, there is the UN, I think that you had mentioned before. There's, the authorities, NASA or space agencies will be kind of part of it, kind of all coming against the hero Orion in Flat. So I think it'll be kind of cool to see people like, oh, but why would they be so angry? And he's telling the truth, and why would they be so mad? Like he knows they don't know, right? Or do they know? So it's exciting, and I'm definitely thrilled to be a co-producer on this project. I'm happy that tonight we're able to like meet the goal. 7 days left. I hope a lot more people, get their first issue. There's multiple ways. So for everyone listening and watching, I mean, really minor. If you just want a digital version, I mean, it's $5. I mean, a coffee. At Starbucks is $5. Well, it is here in Canada, anyways. So, I mean, for the price of coffee, you can have, a digital copy of the comic. And if you want the actual hard copy, I mean, we're talking $7 or $12, 15. You start getting up into the bigger pledges. I mean, there's some cool stuff, collector's edition, special covers. I mean, if you really want to, have you ever wanted to actually be in a comic? I mean, start looking at some of the cool, pledges, the backing that you can do with these packages. I mean, basically, I think even at 50, you can be in the background of this comic. If you want kind of a main, character or something like that, I mean, there's that option as well too. But again, just even at $50, it's exciting. I mean, you're going to be put into the background. I mean, when are you ever going to have the opportunity to have you could point and say, hey, there I am in the background, right? I mean, I was put in there. So I think it's kind of cool. And I think a lot of people will look at it, especially having issue 1 of the comic, but also, being a big part of this. Because again, for me, I being behind this, being a co-producer, I definitely want to see this into a big series. And over time, it's going to snowball, get bigger and bigger. I mean, the flat Earth movement itself is just growing at a rapid pace. It's unstoppable. There's too many people questioning. There's too many people exposing the lies of NASA, scientism, pretty much everything. So this thing is just going to escalate. It's going to get growing in popularity. And it's been an amazing honor to have you on, Vince. It's been great getting to know you, even when I first reached out to you, and we had a wonderful insightful discussion. And then going forward, just with the concepts and ideas to put together in this, because it's just an amazing way to present this truth, or even just these questions in a fictional way through a comic. And who doesn't love a hero? And again, you might not even believe in this, but you start rooting for the hero. You want the hero to win.
Yeah.
Expose that dome world. You're an exposed creation, so I think it's going to be exciting. I think there's a lot of potential, and I think we're just starting to see the beginning. And thank you so much for everyone that pledged, that backed this Kickstarter. It's going to help really propel it into being a incredible series with the card game. I think that everything that is going to be worked on over the next few months, I think people are going to be really happy. I mean, we're going to be doing updates. I'll be making sure that we do some updates. Vince and I will do a couple of interviews and progress of what's going on, some exciting surprises. But make sure that you get in and get your special edition. Get certain ones. Just look through the great packages that Vince has put together. Again, at the very bare minimal, $5 gets you the PDF version. So again, I don't think there's not too many people that can't afford even just $5. So look at them. I think it's exciting. Vince has just got a brilliant mind coming together and deciding. And again, we want your input as well too. So I think it's important, to reach out to Vince, to myself, and come up with maybe some ideas. We'd like to bring in the community, what they think is important. We can't guarantee that everything's going to be incorporated, but we value your input. And again, with my weekly show, Flat Earth and the Bible, we're going to be talking about a lot of different topics around this, and this is a very creative way in bringing some of these truths, to a wide, mainstream type appeal. Even right to Comic-Con, right, Vince? We're gonna debut this at Comic-Con.
Yeah, we're gonna do some Comic Cons. You're gonna see us out there, Rob and I, signing away. There's gonna be collector's edition covers, special covers. There's a limited amount. Get those where you can, and we definitely want input. There's also a believers or skeptics page in the comic. You can put your name on either one. So write in and let us know. I don't believe in this. Well, I do believe in this. The book is very neutral in its approach. So it's all the fictional world, but always look around, question your environment, never be one of the sheep. If you're following too close, make for sure you look ahead or above the person in front of you to see where you're going. So flat on the cover it says, "Is knowledge truth? What you know truth or not?" That's what we always want to know. That's what we want to explore. So pledge. Go to Kickstarter.com. Type in flat in the search bar. Pledge. Join the experience, and we're going to make this happen.
Yeah, and I've got the link in the description for the Kickstarter. I'll be putting some more information after the show is completed. But again, I'm your host, Robbie Davidson. You're listening to Flat Earth and the Bible Live. This is episode 1 with my awesome guest, Vince White. And together, we're going to make history with Flat, the comic book and card game. So Vince, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate you so much. I look forward to discussing and talking and even getting the input of the community and to making this comic one of the greatest comics ever.
Thanks, Rob. Much appreciated.
Okay, take care. Thanks everyone for listening, and stay tuned for next week for episode 2. Take care. Blessings.
Hero Dark. And so I wanted to try to create a line of comics that brought that nostalgia back, that sense of right and wrong back, the clear distinction between the good and the evil, and to give kids something to dream about again and look forward to. And my books are all ages, but I emphasize the fact that they're supposed to be inspiring young minds and young readers. And I wanted to create something that was for reluctant readers. And so hence the Powerverse and comics. And what led me here to do this Kickstarter for Flat, the comic book, is about 6-7 months ago, I was on YouTube, watching the normal streams, news, 5-second animal videos, and then all of a sudden I see something about flat Earth. So, actually, it was an interview, and this gentleman was talking about flat Earth, and he brought up the horizon line, and he said the horizon line never falls, and we've all been there. We've looked out on the ocean, and we see the flat horizon line. If I'm ex-military, so if you've ever been in an airplane or flown anywhere, I've been to Germany, all over. And as we look out the airplane windows, you see the horizon line, the carpet of clouds stretch out to the horizon line. And it really made me stop and think. It never falls from eye level. It never drops to your nose, to your lips, to your chin, and beneath you. And me already being a sort of moon skeptic, an Apollo skeptic, this sort of just clicked in my mind. And as an artist, I realized, we draw the horizon line falling. We draw it to make dramatic effects. We study perspective, foreshortening and worm's eye view, aerial views, these things to emphasize meaning within a panel. And when we think we think in our minds that the horizon line drops, but in reality it still stays high. When we draw Superman flying, we always draw him flying in clear blue skies. We never draw him with the horizon line behind him because it would just take all the fun out of it. But I realized that is the case. If we were really drawing something realistically to match what we see, the horizon line would be in the back of every picture of him in the air. And that just blew my mind. And from there, I was kind of hooked, watching video after video. How does this work? How does this? Is it more to it? And it just snowballed into into me having to put it into a comic book, which is flat right now, and which obviously led me to you. I'm so glad that I met you, and now we've.
There is, and that's an amazing thing to see. I can't tell you how many stories or emails or even phone calls I've had with people that have said, I'm opening the Bible for the first time in my life because I know there's a God and I want to get to know him. So I think even just presenting this and showing that there is a uniqueness to the world, that a lot of the, heliocentric universe type lies they've fed us for so long, feed in basically destroying our worth, teaching us that we're just accidents, that we're random, we're just floating around in space. Really, there's nothing that's unique or special about us. We're a cosmic accident. And I think, whether, you go to the full spectrum of getting into flat Earth, or questioning the shape of the Earth, even starting with just looking at the difference between heliocentric model and geocentric model. When you understand that, there's a possibility they've been lying about us flying around the sun and everything they say, because we know, as a lot of Christians that will be listening to this program, we've known for a long time their lies with evolution. And it's been very easy to expose those. So if they've lied about evolution, is it possible is it possible that they might have lied about our cosmology? And I think that people are waking up and looking into it and starting to find out that there's a real hatred towards the Bible, towards God, really trying to destroy the foundations of the Bible. So for me and my channel, Celebrate Truth, it's all about kind of representing, the biblical truth of what's going on, whether you're talking about in Joshua, when it's talking about commanding the sun and the moon to stop over specific places. I mean, it didn't say Earth stop. It actually says the sun and the moon stopped. Therefore, biblically speaking, these luminaries are actually orbiting. They're moving. But we've been taught that no, the sun, doesn't move. We orbit the sun. And if you follow it back throughout history, you'll find that, Copernicus, and even before that, there was a lot of this warring going on, but it really took hold with Copernicus and most of the Darwinian theories of science. And a lot of our modern day sciences spawned from a very hatred in changing the order on what was, scientifically known known in those days. So I guess we've got to a point now where, science is masqueraded to a point where all their theories are fact, yet, they're still called theories: theory of evolution, the theory of gravity, the theory of relativity. These are not scientific, these are theories, and yet we're taught in schools that this is fact. There's no debate, and I think that's the important thing. So having a comic like Flat, just exposing people to a different world, because I don't know, but I would say almost every comic I've ever seen or read, it's got universes and it's got, balls, and, when it comes to the earth. So this is the first time ever presenting the earth as something different. And what does it look like? How does the world react when the hero is trying to expose his findings? And again, I guess we're seeing that when we're trying to, do our quest for truth. And you mentioned some of your comic buddies, how is their initial reaction just even coming out with a fictional comic called Flat?
My sanity was questioned. I had emails checking on my health. No, but no, my sanity was questioned. They were the conversation. Become co-producers on this project. And Flat is a Kickstarter project. Can I go ahead and tell them where Flat is?
Yeah, I was just going to mention, because I wanted to kind of throw it up. It's a very exciting night. We got a little bit of feedback. Might just wait till it. Okay, I think it's gone. But yeah, it's a very exciting night because, like I said, we're just a few dollars off from hitting the goal. The initial set amount was $4,000, and we're at $3,982 for this Kickstarter. So again, it's going to become a reality. It makes me very excited. A month or so back, I got very excited at the project, getting to know you better, Vince. Kind of hearing about your story, which you'll be going through with the listeners tonight. It was just an exciting time. Again, presenting this, you in the comic book industry, dealing, with illustrations and being able to present it in this way, I think was fantastic. So the storyline, the ideas, I think are just absolutely phenomenal. So I definitely wanted to become a co-producer, with you on this. I wanted to see it come to fruition, and it's an exciting night. Like I said,
and that was just happenstance. Like you. You came across it just like anyone else, I guess. So I was kind of selectively picking people to come look at the Kickstarter, and some kind of way I think you got word of it, and you looked at it, you liked it. We talked a little bit. I even think you donated originally or pledged to it, and then we kept talking a little bit more. And you're like, hey, this is an awesome project. I thought it was, and that's why I wanted to do it. And for all those who are listening, Flat is the culmination of about 6 to 7 months of me researching the flat Earth concept and speaking about it amongst some of my comic friends. And the thing about flat Earth, or even if you're questioning the globe or the shape of the globe, the size of the globe, something about those words, flat Earth, just brings out the worst responses in people. And it was so true with me and some of my comic buddies, you could say. And they did not want to have me to talk about it. I guess I have to admit that I became a little obsessed over it. I'm trying to figure out what is this thing, and I was trying to share the information with them, and they limited our conversations to only comic book talk. So I said, okay. So I said, you know what? I'm going to make a comic book about it. Therefore, I can talk to you guys about the concept. And I guess that wasn't that. That still didn't make them happy, and ultimately, we kind of broke ties over this subject, and had to create a whole new publishing brand, Cryptic Comics. This is not with the Powerverse. This is with some other another entity that I was with, a business entity, and so I created Cryptic Comics, and the idea was to
and the Bible. Welcome to Flat Earth and the Bible. Episode 1. We've got an exciting guest for you this evening. His name is Vince White, and we're going to be talking a lot about just what he's been up to and a bit about his past. Vince White's an American comic book artist, writer, creator, and independent publisher. He's best known for creator-owned work, The Legend of Willpower comic book, and one of the founders of the Primal Paper Comics, Virginia-based comic book coalition and independent comic book publishers and creators. Vince's technical training and background is in computer-aided graphic design, but he made the move to full-time comic book creator with his first independent publishing of The Legend of Willpower in March 2011. Now, coming up to 2016, Vince has got an exciting project that we're going to be talking about tonight called Flat. And without further ado, let's introduce Vince. Vince, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you, Robbie.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. I said this is the first episode of Flat Earth and the Bible. Going to be running this as a weekly show and just getting excited, becoming a co-producer on this project. I just felt that it was important to get this to the top of the list to see this project come to fruition, because I think that not only some of the biblical themes in the comic and the card game, I think that when it comes to the lies that we've been told about the world we live in, and being brought into a fictional way through a comic book, I think is extraordinary. I think it's a great way to present this information, even if it is fictional, to get people start questioning and what would a world look like that the hero of this comic book is part of. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about your history and just what led you up to this time for you.
Well, yeah, like you said, I'm a comic book artist. Before I was a comic book artist, I was a fan just like everyone else, a kid who loved comics and Saturday morning cartoons and things like that. And I just realized that those things had a great effect on me as I got older. I didn't realize it, but it taught me right from wrong. It taught me morals. You don't realize it when you're a kid and you're watching the good guy dispense of the bad guy, but you're actually taught that good guys or bad guys never win. And, the good guy saves the day. And, you take a bite out of crime. Stop, drop, and roll, how a bill becomes a law, all those things. And as I looked out over the landscape of entertainment, especially as I got more and more into graphic design, I realized that those nostalgic properties have disappeared. They're no longer there. In fact, all the Saturday morning cartoons are no longer on public channels anymore. They're all relegated to like commercial or cable channels. And so for the last 20 years, kids have been watching cartoons that are more sarcastic and the heroes are more dark. You see all the movies. The thing is, they have to explore the flat Earth mythology or concept in a comic form, using modern day superheroes. And the idea is, what if a hero had the ability to fly high enough to see the Earth for himself, and the shape it was and everything else. And that is the concept behind Flat. It starts off there and it goes on this wild journey of oh gosh, there was a movie called Enemy of the State where what's his name? Will Smith is somehow in possession of some knowledge via cassette tape or something, and he becomes public enemy number one. And I'm just imagining a hero, and for the sake of the argument, just so you can picture it, someone like Superman, who finds out the shape of the Earth isn't what he expected, at least in his world. And as he tries to spread this information, how how will the governments or the powers that be react to that, and how will his loved ones react to that? How will the people who are closest to them, will they think he's gone bonkers? Those who know, what will they do to quiet him? And how can you quiet someone who, is powered by the sun? That is the story of Flat. What I wanted to also do was touch on the Flat Earth. Sort of touches on some biblical themes, and I myself am a Christian, but I don't try to write books to beat people over the head with my religious beliefs. But there are some themes in Flat Earth that are biblical, that I will touch on slightly, and I think you can enjoy it either way. If you're not even paying attention, you might not even realize they're there, but they might point you in certain directions or certain scriptures or things like that. But the concept is very much a journey of self-discovery, and what happens when you do step into some new information, when you are enlightened, or where you find a new faith or of sorts, and those around you are not receptive of it. That's the story of Flat. So
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's great to have something portrayed, like you said. You're not trying to beat people over the head with it. I mean, myself, I've been a Christian for 23 years, and coming to this revelation was just so massive for me. And one I find so incredibly amazing about this conspiracy, in the seeking of truth, people are waking up to the fact that there is a creator.